Hello. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of NFL Talk of Elite Wages. This is NFL Week 3 Part 2. So this is Sunday's play, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. NFL Week 2, done and dusted. Thursday Night Football, done and dusted. I'm not going to talk about that game today. I'll save that for next week's recap. But I'm sure you all know what happened in that game. So let's hop into NFL Week 3. I'm going to start off by saying I've taken a few different angles in this week's selections. I've been noticing a lot of consistencies over the first 2 weeks, and I'm actually finally ready to take advantage of those markets, take some risks. I know it's not always fun to root for something to happen in a game than it is to root for a team to win, but we are here to make money, and that's what I intend to do this week. I'm ready for a solid profit week. I don't want another half unit win. I want some full solid unit wins, profits this week. So straight into this week's plays. We're going to start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers minus 6.5 at odds of 1.9. Again, I'm starting off this week's NFL plays with a team who has won their opening 2 games. They've looked very impressive while doing it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers not only won convincingly against the Washington Commanders, something that was expected of them to do, but they also held off last season's top offense in the Detroit Lions last week. That was while limiting them to just 1 touchdown and 16 points. They did this without the help of 3 of their top players in their secondary. Winfield Jr., Josh Hayes and Bryce Hall were all out for this game, and although Goff threw for 300 plus yards, with 100 of those going to Amon-Ra St. Brown, they kept him out of the end zone and forced Goff to throw 2 interceptions. Next up for the Bucs are the Denver Broncos. This Denver Broncos team, led by rookie quarterback Bo Nix, was expected to elevate them into contention for their division, or at least get them some wins in the division. Instead, they've suffered back-to-back defeats, only scored 1 touchdown in the process. The Broncos offense could only muster up 6 points against one of the best defenses in the league last week. Bo Nix couldn't find his first NFL passing touchdown either. He was instead picked off twice, and that's now 4 interceptions in 2 games for the rookie. Although the Bucs defense isn't anywhere near the level of the Steelers defense that they played last week, I do believe this game is majorly unbalanced when you compare their offenses. Bo Nix and the Broncos, they've struggled to start the year. The Bucs have impressed a lot of people with their 2-0 start, myself being one of those. Baker Mayfield has 5 touchdown passes, one rushing touchdown, and I think he improves on those stats again this weekend as the Bucs get another impressive win against the Denver Broncos team that can't find the end zone. Second play, this is one of my favourite plays of the weekend. Again, this is another one of those strange little angles that I've sort of found consistencies in, and it's Texans over 1.5 field goals. And I know it's not fun. It's not that fun to bet on this kind of bet, but this is how we make money in this game. This game is expected to be a tough matchup, which is fairly surprising when you think back to the off-season on how low everyone's power rankings the Minnesota Vikings were headed into the season. I was one of those guys who didn't expect much from this Vikings team, but to start the season they've actually played really, really well, and they've played well above a level that everyone thought they would be. Starting their season with a fairly routine win against the Giants probably was expected, in which they won by 22 points. But last week they had a huge upset win against the San Francisco 49ers, and they actually won by 6, so it's safe to say that playing the Vikings won't be a walkover. The Houston Texans have also started their campaign with back-to-back wins. A lot of people have this team as an outsider bet for this year's Super Bowl winners, and in terms of talent, it's hard not to see why. They have a top 10 quarterback who has consistently been able to move this team into scoring positions, and in this game, I'm going to be targeting their field goal number. CJ Stroud, he's thrown 3 touchdowns in his 2 starts this season, and in fact their offense as a unit has only scored 4. Like I said, CJ Stroud has been able to move this team into scoring positions, and it just so happens their kicker is up to the task of kicking in those field goals. Fairbairn is 100% through the first 2 weeks, he's gone 7-7 along with 3 out of 3 extra points, so he hasn't missed yet. In Houston's week 1 game, he knocked down 4 field goals and he kicked another 3 last week. More interestingly, as long as they can get him into kicking attempt range anywhere inside the opposition half, he can knock it down. He's actually 6-6 from 50 yards or more, so range isn't really that much of an issue with him. His season long so far this season is 59. As for the Vikings, as well as they have played, they have allowed opposing teams to reach their half on numerous occasions. In last week's game against San Francisco, they only allowed 1 field goal, but that was mainly due to the fact that the 49ers were down. They were losing, they were down, they needed to score touchdowns, not field goals. Secondly, they had 2 opportunities where they could have kicked a field goal, but instead decided to go for it on 4th down. And instead of taking the points, they ultimately lost possession and missed out on an extra 6 points, which in theory would have tied the game. In week 1 against the Giants, they allowed the Giants just 6 points coming from 2 field goals. And again, similarly to the 49ers, they had an opportunity to kick an extra 3-point on 4th down, but again, because they were down big, they had to go for the touchdown to eat into that deficit. Opportunities are there for the Texans this week, and I expect them to remain in a tight game with the Vikings. If the Texans get presented with an opportunity to kick some more points, I believe they'll have the confidence in Fairbairn to add 3 points to their score. After all, it could be the difference between winning and losing in this game. In fact, I'm going to go all out on my prediction here, and I'm going to say they get this done in the first half. After all, they've got at least 2 field goals in the first half in both games to start the season. They even had 2 in the first quarter in last week's game. So we're going to go for two plays on this game. The first one is a 1-unit play on the Texans over 1.5 field goals at odds of 1.75. And then I'm going to throw another half a unit on the Texans over 1.5 field goals in the first half. And that's at plus money. That's at 3.1 odds. So that's good odds there. And again, they're 100% on 2 field goals in the first half to start the season. Now, this is probably one of the more risky selections on my betting card this week, but I feel like I've convinced myself enough to take a punt on this one, and hopefully I can convince you guys to play it with me as well. Like I keep saying, I do think the Bears will figure things out towards the midway point, or even late on in the second half of the season. But for now, while they're playing this badly, I'll continue to fade this Bears offense. I've mentioned it previously on other episodes. The Bears rookie Caleb Williams has struggled since the start of the season. The Bears got saved by their defense in week 1, not scoring a single offensive touchdown. Finished week 1 with well under 200 total offensive yards as well. In week 2, he didn't help improve that offense either. In their loss against the Texans, the Bears finally scored an offensive touchdown, which was run in by Herbert, but they still failed to reach 250 offensive yards. In the back of that, Williams threw interceptions on back-to-back plays, which ultimately iced the game for the Texans. The Colts started off with a loss of their own to the Texans, a closely fought-out contest and a 27-29 loss in week 1. And if we're comparing those 3 teams, I think it's quite clear to see that Houston's offense is far better than the Bears' offense. Another 1-score loss to the Packers in week 2 dropped them to 0-2. In that game, they managed to keep the Packers to just 16 points. Yes, they were without Jordan Love, but Josh Jacobs and the run game of Green Bay dominated this game as they totaled over 260 yards on the ground. A side note on that point, the Texans were also able to rush for 213 yards in week 1. So it's safe to say in this matchup, the Bears' ground game isn't anywhere near the level of the Texans or the Packers. The Bears' ground game has only tallied up 155 total yards on the season, opening 2 games. In all honesty, I'm struggling to actually find a way that the Bears can win this game. Their ground game is severely underachieving, as is Caleb Williams. If they can't run the ball and they can't find yardage and points through the air, they're going to struggle to reach 20 points in this game, and I don't think the Bears defense will be able to bail them out again like they did in week 1. It could potentially get sweaty, it could get quite close towards the end of the game, but take the Bears team total under 20.5 for one unit at odds of 1.83. On to my next play. I know it's another under, and it's honestly for similar reasons to the Bears team total under I just spoke about. The Panthers have been dreadful, and it hasn't just been to start this season. It was all last season too, and if we're being honest, their roster as a whole doesn't seem to have improved much during the off-season. During the opening 2 games, the Panthers have scored just 16 points combined. They got 10 in week 1 and 3 last week. In week 1, they barely got over 200 total offensive yards, and in week 2, they just about scraped past 170 total yards in offense. This was in an offense led by Bryce Young, who's thrown under 250 passing yards in total, and he's thrown 3 interceptions, and he's gained a 9.1 quarterback rating. Now we've got a quarterback change in Carolina. Veteran Andy Dalton steps in, and while he might improve this offense slightly, the O-line still is going to struggle to keep him safe, especially when he's not as mobile as Bryce Young. In the first 2 games, the Panthers O-line has allowed 6 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and I don't see this changing overnight. Just because a new quarterback is under center doesn't mean the O-line is going to be able to keep him safe. They've played poorly enough as it is, and now they have to face a Raiders defense led by Max Crosby. So far this season, the Raiders have allowed opponents over 17 points on both opening games, but they were facing, quite better offensive units than the Panthers. In both of those 2 games, the Raiders were beaten significantly on the ground, allowing both the Chargers and the Ravens to rush for over 150 yards each. The Panthers are yet to generate that kind of run presence and only rushed for 148 yards across their first 2 games combined. Max Crosby is also the only Raider to generate any kind of pressure onto opposing quarterbacks with the team's only sacks. He's got 3. He's got 5 tackles for loss as well. But this is an ideal spot for players like Christian Wilkins to help Crosby in pressuring the quarterback. Since the beginning of the 2023 season, the Panthers have struggled as an offensive unit. They failed to score 18 or more points in 14 out of 19 games. As for the Raiders, they're headed into this game as 6-point favourites. Line is shifting a little bit, but 6-point favourites. They won 8 games last season, and in 7 of those, they allowed their opponent 17 points or under. So when they win, they're more than likely going to keep their opponent to 17 points or under. We're actually getting a really key number at 17.5 in this game. This would allow the Panthers to score 2 touchdowns on a field goal and would still cash this bet. But to be honest, that's looking unlikely, and I don't see that happening anyway. In conclusion, I don't believe that a quarterback change will help this Panthers team. Even if Andy Dalton is 4-0 against the Raiders, that's the only reason I can think of the Panthers bringing in Andy Dalton for this game. It was rumoured and reported actually that Cam Newton got a training session with the Carolina Panthers, and they're looking to bring him back as well. But for now, it's Andy Dalton. I expect the Raiders to dominate in the trenches and make things difficult for the Panthers in the pass and in the run game. This Las Vegas team is going to be extremely high on confidence after taking down the Ravens last week, and now they've got a huge possibility of going 2-1 after 3 weeks. I look for this to be a statement win against a struggling Carolina Panthers. So again, take the Panthers team total under. We've got 17.5 at odds of 1.9. That's a key number, 17.5. So lock that one in. I'm going to flip over to take a pause on my NFL plays. I'm going to flip over to fantasy football. You should all know by now, any regulars that listen in, anyone that follows my Twitter and things like that, I'm now partnered with Fantasy Game Day app, which is a fantasy football app in the UK, which allows you to become the GM or the coach of your own NFL team. You get to pick players, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends from the league, from the Sunday slate, and you basically pick a team, highest points wins. That's as simple as that. You get a position for a captain, so you get a captain slot, and that person gets double points. So I have decided to create a segment within my podcast that allows me to talk about some fantasy football selections that I am looking to take this week. Currently, so far, actually, we're on some good numbers. I don't know the numbers. I will add it up for next week and I'll let you all know. But I tipped Joe Mixon in week 1, who got 20 plus. So double that to 40 plus. Last week I got Dobbins as well, which was 40 plus as captain. So this week's captain selection, I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers, and he's a running back, and you can get him for 5,800 coins. The Green Bay offense to start the season has relied heavily on their ground game. They sit in first place in the NFL for rushing yards per game with 212, 15 yards higher than the team in second place. Now, this is mainly due to Jordan Love being absent in last week's game that allowed the Packers to use Jacobs heavily in the run game, rushed for 151 yards. The Packers find themselves as a field goal underdogs in back-to-back weeks. So last week against the Colts, they were +3, and now they are +3 against the Titans. It has just been noted that Jordan Love is questionable, and he's back in training camp today, so he could play. I'll talk about that again in a second anyway. It doesn't really affect the way I'm taking this game. The game script for the Packers could be similar to last week, especially if Love is out. Even if Love is active, Jacobs should still see a nice chunk of the ball. In week 1 with Jordan Love, Jacobs rushed for 84 yards and added another 20 receiving. The Titans, they haven't yet allowed too many rushing yards to running backs to start the year. They're actually allowing the 8th least running back yards with just 69. But they have played 2 teams who rank in the bottom 7 for rushing yards per game, so I fully expect Jacobs to be able to hit 100 yards from scrimmage. I think he actually gets in for a touchdown this week as well. Last week he fumbled in the end zone. It was a nightmare for Packers fans and fantasy football fans. But this week, I believe he gets in the end zone. He gets that touchdown. So like I said, 100 scrimmage yards will be nice, and a touchdown. And the second pick I'm going to make this week is more of a value play. So when I say value play, I'm thinking of a player who is valued lower than the average amount. The average amount is 5,000, so I want someone fairly significantly lower than that amount to be able to save money for those big quarterbacks, etc. But a player that can still gain you a lot of points that not many other people will have. So this week I'm going to go with the tight end again for the Eagles, Dallas Goedert. And I say this every week, the tight end position is the position that earns the least points in fantasy football, so it's easy to look for this position to create a value play. This week for my value play, I'm going with another tight end, obviously, and I've increased the price slightly. Last week and week 1 they were around 2,000. You can get Dallas Goedert for 2,400 this week, and I still think he is way undervalued. I think he should be a lot more than he is. Just mainly because of potential. So to start, the Eagles are potentially playing without A.J. Brown this week, and last week they struggled to get their passing game going without him. This could and should increase Goddard's usage, and in this game they should try and get the pass game going. In both games this season, he's got 4 and 3 receptions for 31 and 38 yards. He's also always a red zone threat with his height and his pass catching ability. So currently the Saints allow the 11th least yards to a tight end, but they faced a poor offense in the Panthers, and they faced a Dallas team without their tight end one, Jake Ferguson. So the upside is high on Dallas this week. I think the Eagles are the 2-point underdogs, I think, so they'll look to get their passing game going, and obviously without A.J. Brown, the next up from Devonta Smith is going to be Dallas Goedert. So I'm looking for him to step up, and he's averaging around 7.5, which is around the average for a tight end anyway. So if he gets anywhere near that, I'll be happy. If he gets that touchdown, that'll take him well over 10 points. So we'll be happy with that one. there was my fantasy football selections this week. Let me know in the comments, everything like that, comment below who you're taking, or if you're following me and taking these. Let me know how you've been doing in the past weeks, etc. But before we go on, remember to use my code ELITE, ELITE. That gives you a free game after your first paid game. So get locked in, get your teams locked in, use my players, win some money. Next NFL play, we've actually got a collab bet with one of my boys, BWABets. This is a real original collab. We've been linking up on plays literally for probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years now. And although I don't actually have an official record, I'm going to be pretty confident in saying we're profitable when we link up. Either way, you need to drop my guy BWABets a follow on Twitter. For as long as I've known him, which is a fair few years now, like I said, around 3 or 4 years, I've never seen him have a losing season. So I'll link his profile in the bio below. Lock in, give him a follow, Taylor's bets, win some money. I've made it perfectly clear in week 1 and in week 2 that I'll be looking to back the Steelers defense quite a lot this season, and I want to start off by saying that I am personally 2-0 for plus 1.8 units while backing the Steelers and their defense this season. This is obviously a collab between myself and BWA. He is a Chargers fan. Steelers versus Chargers. We're going with the Steelers. Both the LA Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers have started their campaigns with 2 wins from 2 games. Honestly, to start the year, I'd never expected them, either one of them, to start 3-0, and that's what's going to happen in this game. One of those is going to be a 3-0 team. Both teams' defenses have played extremely well. The Chargers only allowed 13 total points out of 2 weeks. The Steelers only allowed 16. The Chargers will travel to Pittsburgh for the Steelers' home opener, and the Pittsburgh crowd should be pumped up at the potential of going 3-0 in front of their home crowd. The Chargers O-line has played well so far this year, but the Steelers' front 7 is playing on another level. They're giving up just 3.7 rushing yards per attempt, which is 7th in the NFL. And opposing quarterbacks have just a 56.8 passer rating through 2 games, which ranks them as the first team in the NFL, the number 1 team in that category. J.K. Dobbins, he's been a huge reason for the Chargers' success to start the season. He's averaged a huge 9.9 yards per carry, but running backs have had more than 5 yards per carry against the Pittsburgh Steelers in only 3 games since the beginning of 2023 season. The Steelers defense only allowed the highly rated Bijan Robinson 68 yards in week 1, and the total Broncos running back committee 64 yards in week 2. So Steelers are locked in. The Chargers have scored 22 and 26 points in their first 2 games, but they were against teams that are nowhere near the level of the Steelers defense. So they played the Panthers, which was a routine win, and the Raiders, which was also a fairly routine win. This is going to be the Chargers' toughest test so far. The Steelers defense has been as disruptive as ever. 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 14 quarterback hits, 4 interceptions, as they've only allowed 1 touchdown through 2 weeks. Their offense has yet to really get going properly. They themselves have only scored 1 touchdown, as they've mainly relied on their defenses and Chris Boswell for kicking field goals. He's kicked 8, I think. They played it fairly safe in their opening 2 games, with Fields just doing what it takes to secure the win. He's doing a very, very good job of that. He should keep this job until he loses, in my opinion. But with this talented group, George Pickens, Najee Harris, and they've obviously got fan favourite Pat Freiermuth as well, it's only a matter of time before Fields and the offense clicks and manages to get in the end zone. The line for this game has been set at -2 in favour of the Steelers. The Steelers have never had a losing season with Mike Tomlin, and since Big Ben retired, the Steelers have gone through a few quarterbacks. Now they've got a solid 2. They've got Russ Wilson, and they've got Justin Fields. Currently, Justin Fields is doing a very, very good job. But again, since Big Ben retired, the Steelers have won 21 regular season games. All of those have been won by 2 points. But we're going to take the money line just in case of a real bad beat in the situation where the Steelers win by 1. It has happened. Wouldn't put it past them to do this to us today on Sunday. One final point that BWABets wanted me to add. Remember, he is a Los Angeles Chargers fan, and he wanted me to add that the Chargers simply just suck. So take Steelers moneyline, 1.8 odds, lock it in, let's go. So my final play for NFL Sunday, I'm going to finish things off with an underdog that I like to win outright. The Arizona Cardinals are 3-point underdogs against the Lions this week, but I believe they have what it takes to beat the Lions, just as the Bucs did last week. Getting Kyler Murray back to full fitness makes this whole team look like a new roster. Kyler posts the second best quarterback rating in the NFL with a 91.3 quarterback rating. He now also has the joint third most passing touchdowns after a 3-touchdown display against LA Rams last week, in which they won 41-10. In week 1, they lost by just one score to the Bills, which was 34-28. One consistent thing about the Cardinals to start the year, obviously it's only been 2 weeks, but they've consistently been able to score points. James Conner has been running the ball very well and effectively, and the Kyler to Harrison Jr. connection finally clicked as Harrison had 130 yards for 2 touchdowns in the first quarter against the Rams. The Cardinals' pass rush has also seemed to improve too. They've started the season with 7 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, and 12 quarterback hits. This bodes well when they are facing a team who is struggling to find the end zone, and that is without their quarterback being sacked often. So Goff has only been sacked twice in 2 games. Expect that to change in this game. I expect the Cardinals defense to get after Goff and get him down a few times. The situation was slightly different when the Lions played the Rams in week 1 to when the Cardinals played the Rams in week 2, but even so, the Lions struggled to beat the LA Rams. They eventually scored the winning touchdown in overtime. They won 26-20. The Detroit Lions were last year's top offensive team, but they've started this year struggling against teams that were thought to be mediocre. They struggled in the win against the Rams, and they only scored 16 points in the loss to the Bucs. That was while Aiden Hutchinson had 4.5 sacks in the game. So you'd have thought forcing 5 punts, again, 4.5 sacks, an interception, that would give you more opportunities to score on offense, but didn't happen. Both teams possess a huge run threat to one another against each other. The huge running game possibility in this one. Obviously, the Lions with Monty and Gibbs, they've totaled. Well, the whole committee has totaled 302 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Cardinals have James Conner, Kyler Murray, and co. rushing for 355 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both teams use the run game often, which could be an indication we might see both running attacks go head to head. This would mean clock will continue to roll. We may see less plays in this game, which could set up to be a close finish towards the end, but ultimately it would not surprise me to see both teams to score a rushing touchdown. Now, I think with this Cardinals offense rolling and the defense playing quite well, they should cause the Lions some problems on both sides of the team, on offense and on defense. The Cardinals team is much improved. It's a much improved team from the 4-13 team we saw last year. I think you keep the points. I think Cardinals win this game. So you can get the Cardinals money line at 2.3, so that's a plus money play. I do want to add slightly as well. Odds aren't out on this one yet, but if you can get it, I'm going to personally be taking in this game, Cardinals and Lions game, over 1.5 rushing touchdowns. I'm not sure what the odds will be. I don't know what they are. They're not released yet, but I will be taking that. I think that is a solid play for this game. Both teams will score a rushing touchdown. So that brings me to the end of my plays for the week. So I'll run a recap through those again. We've got the Bucs minus all 1 unit unless I stay otherwise. So we've got 1 unit, Bucs minus 6.5 at odds of 1.9. We've got the Texans 1 unit over 1.5 field goals at 1.75 odds, and then we've got a half unit on the Texans over 1.5 field goals in the first half. That's at 3.10. We go down to the Bears team total under 20.5. That's a 1 unit play for, I got that plus money, so I got that 2.05. 1 unit on the Panthers team total under 17.5 at 1.9. We've got the collab between myself and BWABets. 1 unit on the Steelers money line at 1.8. And then to finish off, we've got 1 unit on the Cardinals money line at 2.25. And again, if you can take that game to have over 1.5 rushing touchdown. It doesn't matter. Both teams, well, either team could score 2 that cashes. I think they get 1 each. So take that as well. Again, I will link BWABets in the description of this play. Lock in, follow him, follow Taylor's plays. He wins some money. Follow on all socials, all my socials. I'll link that also. Again, join the Discord, 24/7 chat. Get me some views on YouTube. Keep the YouTube grind up. Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Substack, anywhere you get your podcast on. Lock in. Let's get it. We'll see you next week for a recap next week.